Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to a caregivers conversation. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and me and Miss Sandra Boyd thought it would be nice to have a conversation about mental wellness and caregivers. Hi, how are you?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing good. I mean, we're caregivers,
So I get it. Yep,
and
I
that
get
and
it.
that's and it's refreshing to have this conversation with you because we are caregivers. So this is just not a conversation of a therapist or a psychiatrist or a coach. We're actually caregivers. So I'm a caregiver, and I've been a caregiver for many, many years. I was the caregiver of my mom, who passed away from breast cancer many years ago. I was a caregiver to one of my best friends, who passed away from colon cancer that metastasized to her liver. And I am currently a caregiver of a 13-year-old autistic son who is nonverbal, got potty trained at 9. So I've been caregiving my probably whole entire most of my adult life. So tell us where your caregiving comes in. First, introduce yourself. Tell us about your platforms and your businesses first.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just hope that one day we can meet in person. We've had so many conversations, and I just want to give you a hug because I applaud you on how well you take care of your son. I watch your posts, and I'm just in awe of you. So hopefully we can meet in person one day, and I can give you a hug.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I am Sandra Boyd. I am the CEO of Caregivers Haven LLC, and it is a business for caregivers of family members who are taking care of someone with mental illness. Um, and I have on Instagram, I'm Caregivers Haven. On Facebook, Caregivers Haven. I have a podcast, Caregivers Haven. Everything's Caregivers Haven. My website should be up next week. I've been saying that for like months, but this time, because I've been having issues with someone, but it really should be up next week, and that will be caregivershaven.com. Um,
So go ahead.
so I was just going to tell you when my caregiving journey started, or were you going to ask me something?
Yep. Go ahead. Tell us that. That's what we need to know
So
first.
my caregiving journey, not only has it been going on my whole adult life, but it actually started at age 10.
Oh,
I like grew up real fast at age 10. So when I was 9 years old, my mom was in a car accident and she was thrown from the car and banged her head on the sidewalk. So she had a traumatic brain injury. But back then, they didn't call it traumatic brain injury or TBI like they do now. And so it happened when I was 9. A year later, she had my baby sister. And then 3 months after that, my dad got killed at his job. He was a lineman for Southern California. So they climbed, he climbed the poles and took care of the wires up there, and he fell and he passed away.
oh,
And so my mom had 4 kids, the youngest one being 3 months old. And then 2 months after that, she started having seizures. And so everyone thought it was because of all the trauma she had been through. She probably back then, they didn't talk about this either, but she probably had postpartum depression. My dad had just died. And come to find out, and this was years later we found out, but it was from the car accident. The seizures were from the car accident. She started having seizures. But long story short, I was 10, I was the oldest, and I became her right arm man. And it really showed. I can remember the day she had her first seizure. And probably about 2 months after that, we were driving. We live in LA, busy, busy streets, and we were in LA, and she was driving one day and had a seizure while she was driving.
wow.
Well, me and all my siblings are in the car, and it's a trip. How I don't like my brother remembers stuff. I can remember an incident, but I can't remember the details of the incident. And so, what I remember, I was in the front seat, and my siblings were in the back seat. And I think what saved us is we were in a Volkswagen with a stick shift. And so, when she had the seizure, her foot came off the gas pedal, and so we like jerked, to a stop. And so
Wow.
we stopped like in the intersection. So, and this is what I mean by I don't remember, because I don't remember how we got home. I don't remember what happened after that. I just remember like screaming and don't remember anything else. But a month later, she came to me and she said, "Mommy needs to teach you how to drive so that if I have a seizure again, you'll be able to get us home and you'll be able to get us safe." And so I just said, okay, because it was my mom, telling me that. Well, I was 10 years old.
Wow.
And the trip thing is I didn't think about it again until I grew up and started having children. And my oldest son turned 10. And I can still remember where I was. He was standing in the driveway, and I was like, that was not normal. Like, it wasn't
No.
until I was an adult that I realized that wasn't normal. So then I said, well, he's a boy, and they say girls mature faster than boys. So I waited till my second daughter, my second child, my oldest daughter, till she turned 10. And I was like, okay, that still was not normal for me to drive. And once I learned how to drive, I continued to drive until I got my driver's license. She would send me to the store. She would send me to pick up my siblings from school. Um, and so it just, it was just crazy. We all really became her caregiver at a very young age, because when she was good, she was good. But when she would have seizures, like, we would have to take care of her. And so when we became like young adults, and I'm thinking what triggered it is just all of us like growing up and starting to move away and have our own life. She started having bizarre behavior. And again, we didn't find this out until years later. When you have a traumatic brain injury, depending on where it is, you will have symptoms like someone with bipolar. And so she had a frontal lobe brain injury. And so she has symptoms like bipolar. So she started exhibiting this bizarre behavior. And everybody, she was always like the life of the party, get the party started and all that. But then she could go on these big highs and dance. And she loves to dance, loves to play the piano, play her music. But then she can also like be in her bed for days. So she was,
Wow.
swinging like that. And so, um, I will be 63 years old next month. So for 53 years, this is the life we live with my mom. And we're still, one of my sisters live with her right now. We're still, we've been dealing with that. And again, when she's good, she's good. But when she ain't, she ain't, you know. Um,
Wow.
and so, and then on top of that, about 9 years ago, another family member became ill with a serious mental illness. And that's who I take care of now. So I still help with my mom. She lives like an hour away from me. I still help when I can. But now I have daily caregiving for a family member with a serious mental illness.
Wow. 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 I
Yeah.
mean, listen, and we're here tonight because I want people who are listening right now to understand that caregivers get mentally exhausted. Physically, of course. Listen, I'm telling you, my son is 13. Oh my goodness, I can't believe he's 13 now. But he's 13. I'm still showering him, helping. I'm still washing him,
Mm-hmm.
so I got to bend down and wash his legs. I'm bending over the shower, putting him in, getting him out, drying him off, putting on his lotion, helping him get dressed, doing this. I'm doing everything with him because he still needs complete care. He does things. He feeds himself and does a lot of things on his own, but there are a lot of things that I do with him that he's not capable yet of doing himself, even though he's making a lot of milestones and a lot of leaps and bounds. There's a lot of stuff like my back and different things like that, from caring for my mom to turning her over, changing her bed, changing her dressing, lifting her up, helping her to the bathroom. This has taken a real, and I know you could testify to this. I'm 52. This has taken a real toll on my body that's
Yes.
showing up now. And I'm thinking to myself, why does my back always hurt? Why am I always this? Why am I always tired? Because we have been on a journey of overextending ourselves for you 53 years, right? For me, probably 18 years. That is a lot of wear and tear on our body. So I wanted people to get a feel of what it feels like to be mentally exhausted during Mental Health Awareness Month. And if there's someone in your life right now, you're listening and you know that they are a caregiver, I'm encouraging you to offer them help. So let's talk a little bit about a couple of things. Let's talk about some things that caregivers can do at home to give themselves some self-care, some love and tender care to ourselves. What are some of the things that you do?
Okay. Yeah, I have a few things I can tell you I do. I do want to go back to something you said when you start talking about your back. My back started hurting only because, in addition to being a family caregiver, I'm also a professional caregiver. I've been
Yes.
a registered nurse for 40 years, and so when you start talking about your back and all that turning and picking up, so on top of my personal caregiving, I've been caregiving all my life, really. Like, when you say that, my goodness.
Yes.
All right. So there are a couple of things I do for mental exhaustion. One of probably there's three off the top of my head. I'll just start talking and see if anything else comes up. But one of the things I do is meditation and mindfulness practice. And so there's a little bit difference between meditation is like you can have a guided meditation and then it kind of, it's like intentional. You're thinking about something intentional during your medication and it's usually longer. And a mindfulness practice it's really just bringing your awareness to right now, like where your emotions are. Think about like when you're brushing your teeth, like really thinking about brushing your teeth and tasting the toothpaste and smelling it, because sometimes we may be doing one thing, but our mind is thinking about 100,000 other things. So mindfulness practice kind of helps you like bring your awareness to now. I remember I heard Maya Angelou one time she said she was washing the dishes and she cut her finger, and she said it happened because she wasn't practicing awareness, because she was looking out the window at her grandkids playing instead of paying attention that I'm washing dishes right now. And so now I'll be transparent for a minute. Mindfulness practice, they call it practice for a reason, because when I first started doing it, a lot of mindfulness practices and even meditation, it has to do with breathing, right? So like some mindfulness practice, it could be something as simple as just going somewhere quiet and taking 3 deep breaths, or box breathing, which, you breathe like 4 seconds, inhale, hold, like you do this little thing. Now I'll be transparent. When I first started doing it, I was like, this ain't working. I just did this breathing and I'm still pissed off, or I just did this breathing and I'm still sad, or I'm still scared. Like whatever it was, I was like, this is not working. Who said that meditation and mindfulness practice works? And so it is a practice. So I can tell you, if you stick with it, it will work. I'm a witness to that, because I was like, this ain't doing nothing for me. And so, and I can give you an example of something recently that like it really, I was able to share with someone, because someone else felt the same way, and I was able to share with them like how it really helped me. And so I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, my family member had a mental health crisis. And, we were freaking out. My heart was pounding, because it was to the point where we were going to have to call 911 if we couldn't get them to calm down. And so when you're in that state and when you're in fight or flight, you can't always make the right decision, right? You can't always think. And so I literally, right in the middle of it, I came in my room, I sat on my bed, and I started doing some box breathing. And when I first sat down, I could hear and feel my heart just pounding. It was just pounding. And as I was doing box breathing, I could hear and feel my heart rate just coming down. It just was slowly coming down. And I had to just stick with my breathing. And I calmed down to the point that I was able to calm down and make a rational decision versus an emotional, scary decision, right? So I had to just tell this lady that, to tell her that if you keep with it and stick with it and learn how to use it, it really can calm you down in a moment of, a stressful crisis situation. Another example I gave her was I said,
I love this though, because so many people don't know the difference between mindfulness and meditation. And I have this little book right here that I just ordered, which is ironic.
Oh, uh-huh.
The little book of mindfulness, right? And I've been reading it, but I wasn't really getting it until you just broke it down of what I was just missing. Is I was missing that I needed to be in the moment, right? So now I can instead of and I was equating it to meditation,
right?
Like meditate on a positive affirmation, meditate on a scripture, meditate on the word. Mindfulness and meditation is two different things. And you just really probably not only cleared that up for me, but you probably cleared that up for a lot of people. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I meditate, a lot of times for meditation, I'll do a shavasana. And if people don't do yoga, shavasana is when I lay on my yoga mat in like a dead man's pose. And in meditation, you're supposed to try to clear your mind if you can. And so when I do that, I just lay there and I just try to think of like nothing, like blackness, or I love the beach. So I'll just try to think about the waves and just hear the waves. And it's longer. It's like when you meditate, usually you spend some time doing it. Whereas mindfulness is, You can be at work stressed out and you can go hide in the bathroom and just sit there for 5 minutes and do some breathing, or just sit there and be quiet. Like, mindfulness is bringing your awareness to right now, paying attention to your feelings, and just letting it, to me, I always say just let your brain rest. It's like just letting your brain rest for a second. Just like give
Mm-hmm.
it a break. Um, so anyway, I gave her that example. And so then another example was, I was thinking, man, I need more practice because that didn't work. Because me and my husband, so I'm a registered nurse and my husband is a therapist. Now, most people who have someone that they're taking care of will be arguing. Like, a lot of times there's a lot of conflict. When I worked as a nurse, as a neonatal in the intensive care unit, a lot of people got divorced from trying to take care of a very ill premature baby. Like, it broke up a lot of families. And so we're no different. People be thinking, oh, you lucky, your husband's a therapist and you're a nurse, you guys probably, do really well. No, we don't, because we be arguing, because I'm looking at it from a nurse's point of view and he's looking at it from a clinician's point of view. And sometimes it matches, but sometimes it doesn't. And so this was one of those nights we were arguing about one of the medications. And so I was so angry I couldn't go to sleep. So I'm laying there doing my breathing. I'm doing all my stuff. And it's like, this ain't working. So I finally just got up and went downstairs and started watching TV. And I was up until like 3 a.m. watching TV, just pissed off. And so I kept doing my breathing. And so I was like, man, I felt so disappointed because I felt like my practice wasn't working, But the next morning, when I finally did go to sleep the next morning, I was able to put everything aside and we had like a cordial conversation and got everything straightened out and fixed it. And so I can tell you, before I was practicing mindfulness practice, I would have still got up the next morning pissed off and not talking. And you know what I mean? Like, it would have been a whole different scenario, right?
So
Because
it did
it
work.
would have still been bad. But because I was doing that breathing, and I was happy that it happened like that, because it taught me a good lesson to not give up. This is a practice. You're doing the right things. Don't give up. And it worked, because both of us the next morning were in a different mood. And I don't get angry a lot, and I can't hold a grudge a long time. But in those first initial hours or whatever, I can still just be like, I ain't talking to you, don't talk to me,
Right. Yes.
So anyway, I just use those two examples to help people know that, don't get disappointed if it don't work right away, or you feel like it's not helping you, because it's a practice. It's just like exercising or something. You have to practice it.
Yes, I love that. I love it. I am a really big essential oil woman. I just, what gives me peace when I need a break, if I can't take one, is to take a few minutes and just inhale and say essential oil, like, just to
Mm-hmm.
change my brain, like a smell. And people may not understand that aromatherapy is a therapy. A smell will change your mood.
Mm-hmm.
A
Mm-hmm.
smell will change your attitude. And people don't get that. People say, I have aromatherapy, and for years I did too. But now that I've always been a caregiver for so long, and I was introduced to the essential oils, doTERRA essential oils, just in case people go get some. Don't go get nothing from nowhere. I didn't tell you that. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'll use doTERRA because it's natural for me, and I just don't like to give Jermaine over the counter medications and stuff like that unless I really have to. But I can actually go and get peppermint oil and uplift myself, like, because now that I've been using peppermint oil so long, my brain has been trained that when I smell it, it is to uplift me. So my brain knows
Mm-hmm.
that you're okay, you're uplifted, you know what I'm saying? And at night
Mm-hmm.
we use an oil called Breathe, and my brain has been trained, and my son, that when we smell that, it's bedtime, it's time, our
Mm-hmm.
body is saying relax, because the aroma clicks something in our brain, if that makes sense. It's like peppermint is like, we're up in the morning and you're gonna have a
Uh-huh.
great day. And then Breathe is like, okay, we're winding down, and Roman chamomile. So, like, I like to encourage people who are caregivers just to take that moment. Both things we both said involve the breathing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You gotta breathe. And I'm so happy that you said that about, how your mom, that flight or fight, because Jermaine had a couple of seizures that really freaked me out. And I really have to bring myself back sometime now, because I can have like a trigger Like he'll make a certain sound and I'll think. So I have to
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I have to bring myself back to the moment. I have to talk to myself too to tell myself like you're okay. Like you're
Mhm.
okay. People say talking to yourself is crazy, but that is one of my ways to bring myself back when I'm having a moment of anxiety to tell
Mhm.
myself. And I say to myself, "You're okay, Trey. It's okay. It's okay.
Mhm.
Whatever way this is gonna go, it's gonna be okay. You're okay." So anybody who just tuned in, we're here tonight and we are caregivers. So we're having a caregivers conversation, which we may do this more often. I'm not sure. We just saw each other on Facebook. I was doing a live and Sandra was like, "Hey," and I was like, "Girl, we need to do something." That was a couple weeks ago. She hit me up, text me, said, "When we doing this? What day you got? What day I got?" And we on here. And this is for somebody. And if it's for one person, and we see you guys in the chat. Hello, hey Kathleen, hey Brittany. Kathleen said her mom is on the way back home Saturday, so she totally understands the caregiver perspective. So going for walks if you can,
Yep,
right? Even if
I
it's
do
even if
that.
it doesn't have to be a long walk, right?
Right. It doesn't. I go for walks. There's a whole big caregiver thing. So, I mean, self-care. So let me say this before I start talking about self-care. So another when you start talking about walks, so another thing so when you're a caregiver, it's like 24/7, right? And so once a week, my husband and I go out to dinner. First of all, that's not enough, but we go out to dinner by ourselves once a week, and we cannot talk about the caregiving thing.
Oh,
Um, and it was hard at first, because at first that's all we talked about. Like, I mean, it's just so much. It's so very present in your life all the time. That's all we talked about. So we said, okay, not only are we going to go once a week by ourselves, but we're not going to talk about that. And so that's a huge part of my self care. Now, I have a little issue with self care because um everybody talks about self-care right now. Everybody talks about self-care and everybody has their own opinion about it. And it worries me because I don't want it to get watered down. For a caregiver, self-care is going to keep you alive. Like
yeah.
it's
Ooh,
serious. It's that serious. And so if everyone's talking about it and you know how, sometimes things get too much
yes.
and people don't pay attention to it anymore. And so that's one of my pet peeves is everybody talks about it. And second of all, my definition of self-care is usually different than other people's definition.
Well,
And
tell
it's
us
not
which.
really different. It's not really different. It's just that I prioritize different things than other people. And what I mean by that is we did a series on my podcast, Caregivers Saving Podcast, the end of last year, and it was called Back to the Basics of Self-Care. Because getting our nails done and going shopping and getting a massage are parts of self-care. I love all those things just like the next person. However, as a nurse, health and well-being in my mind you got to take care of the basics first. Because if I go get my nails done and my nails and stuff are pretty, but I'm exhausted and tired and come home cranky and mad at everybody, and how is that? How am I practicing self-care?
Ooh,
So the basics that I feel like you need to take care of first is nutrition, sleep, exercise, your mental health, your spiritual health. Those are the five podcast idea, because to me, those are the basics. You got to take care of the basics of these things as part of your self-care and your self-love before you do all the other fun stuff. Because the fun
ooh,
stuff ain't going to be as fun, or it's not going to be as productive as it would be if you were talking about these five things first.
yes. Can you give those
Does that
five
make
things one
sense?
more time? Yes, please give those five things one more time.
Yeah. So it's nutrition, sleep, exercise, your mental well-being, and your spiritual well-being.
That makes complete sense. And this is what's going on, I believe, in the world of, like you said, everything becomes trendy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I do a lot on infidelity because that's where I started out, helping families heal through the devastation of infidelity. And when it got popular, people weren't paying attention to infidelity is devastating to families. It was just popular for people to write books and people to do lives on it and people to do this. It was just trendy. Same
Mm-hmm.
thing with Black men and mental health. It just became trendy. So it was so saturated that nobody was really paying attention to the
Pay
problem.
attention.
Like you said, that self care, the word has become go to the spa, do this, do that, and nobody's talking about what's going on internally. We're talking about what's going on externally. Go get your nails done, go get your hair done, and going to the spa can be relaxing, but it's so commercial right now. Like self-care is actually talking to somebody, letting it all out. That's self-care for us, right? And I'm
Yes.
so
Yep.
glad, and I want people who are listening, whoever you're caring for, whether it's somebody with Alzheimer's, whether it's somebody a special needs child, whether it's someone terminally ill, I want you to understand that we all need people who understand what we're going through. There are support groups for everything you're going through. If you
Yes.
have a premature baby, there are support groups for women who are going with postpartum depression or dealing with premature babies. There are support groups for people who are dealing with mental illness. We're not all in one bucket. And the thing about it is, as caregivers, we get put all in one bucket. And I can't understand, I really can't understand what a neo-nic mom is going through,
Mm-hmm.
right? But another group of neo-nic moms can understand, right? I have my autism support group where I can unload on one of my very good friends who is the founder of Naissance Place, was a nonprofit for families and underserved communities who deal with autism. I can call her and unload. That's self-care for me. Me and her could be on the
Right.
phone for 2 hours with
Right.
each other, right? So
Yeah.
self-care is getting it out that I'm not okay. And one thing about us as caregivers, and you can speak on this too, is that we we overdo it. We're always okay. Like, because we're self-care. We're caregivers. I took care of this person. I took care of that person. I've been doing this. I'm taking care of Jermaine. You're taking care of your family member. You took care of your mom. So we're never the person who people think that, oh, they're not okay. But I'm gonna say this out loud. We're not always okay.
Mm-mm.
We are not. As much as we run this race and jump these hurdles in this marathon and win some of these races, sometimes we are not okay. So if you have a family member who is a caregiver or a friend or a colleague or a worker, and you can offer, and it doesn't mean you got to come sit with our kid. If you see us and you talk to us for 5 minutes and tell us something positive, girl, I admire you. Do you need anything? Is there anything that I can do? I know I can't take care of your kid, but if you need somebody to talk to on the phone while you dealing with it, I got my earbud in. You know what I'm saying? We
Yeah.
don't.
The thing about that too, Trey, is that one of the issues with the fact that we're not okay is that sometimes we don't know that we're not okay.
Oh Lord,
So
I'm
then,
leaving. I'm
so
leaving. I'm going to bed now. I'm going to take a nap.
yeah, and so then that becomes the problem, right? Because now we about to fall out, pass out, stress out, burn out, faint, something, and we just going. I in my podcast I mentioned this, that one day I was at the grocery store. It was 4 o'clock. And I was, at the checkout line, they got chips over here and candy bars over here. I grabbed the candy bar and grabbed some chips. I talked about this in my podcast. And then I was like, why am I getting this? I'm diabetic. Why am I grabbing these things? And then I realized, because I didn't eat today. And then I was like, did I take my medicine? I didn't take my medicine today. And I was like, well, if I take my medicine, have I even drank anything? No. My family member got their meds, went to their doctor appointment, got all their meals, and so I think I did that podcast like a year ago or something, but I had already been practicing self-care, but that like really did something to me. I was like, I have got to do better. And, I talk to people about, on the airplane, how they say, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, about.
Yes.
So that too, that becomes trendy. People say it all the time, but really think about that. So if you're sitting there and the mask fall down, the first thing we want to do is take care of our little kids. So you turn around, you put the mask on your kid. In the meantime, you faint.
Yes.
Because you don't have no oxygen. So you're out. So now your kid's over here screaming, I want my mommy, or I need help. Ain't nobody there to help the kid because you was trying to help yourself first. Help yourself first so that you can continue to be this great caregiver that you are. You got to love yourself. You got to help yourself. You got to practice self-care first so that we can continue. We can't continue to do all these great things that we're doing if we're not taking care of ourselves. And that's what happened to me. I retired 2 years ago because my back went out.
Right. Right.
And
And
somebody kept, my friend kept telling me, Sandra, if you don't slow down, God's going to put you flat on your back. Oh, no,
yep.
I'm fine.
Yep. And
That's what
again,
happened.
my friends too. My friends check on me because like I could go all day without eating. Like but my son, he gonna have a breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Uh-huh.
I could go all day, and then I'm like, why is my head hurting?
Yes.
Because you didn't eat. Why am I? Because you didn't sit down for 5 minutes. Self care for us as caregivers is sitting down for 5 minutes. For real, just sit down for 5 minutes. And I got to tell myself sometimes, and I'm working from home too because I'm a coach, so I work from home. So I'm working with my clients. He's upstairs now, Jermaine. He may come down at any minute. I'm not sure, but he's upstairs. And sometimes I can't predict what's going to happen with him. So in those moments when I can sit down, I'm trying to get something else done, trying to get something
Mhm.
else done instead of saying, in this moment, Trey, you need 5 minutes. And if you just tuned in, we are having a conversation about caregivers because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so many caregivers are mentally exhausted. So many caregivers are functionally depressed. We are functioning, but we're depressed. So many caregivers, again, are physically, mentally, and spiritually exhausted. Why is this happening to me? So we wanted to come on tonight, and my guest tonight is Sandra Boyd, and she is a retired nurse, and she's been a caregiver ever since she was 10 years old for 53 years. So we felt like we wanted to have this conversation tonight to help some people who are caregivers and to help ourselves because this is therapy for us. So a 5 minute sit down is therapy, is self care for us. You were
Yes.
gonna say something?
Um, yes, I had two things I was going to say. One of them is on on one of my podcasts, one of my guests said something that has helped me tremendously, and hopefully it'll help somebody who's listening. She said like this: put your name on the list. And I was
Oh,
like, what? Everybody got a to-do list, whether it's written down or whether it's in our head. We got this big to-do list. She said, put your name on the list. Literally, so when I first started doing it, I don't have to do it like this anymore. I would literally put feed Sandra.
yes,
Sandra,
yes.
take your meds. Feed Sandra lunch. And she said that. That's what she said to do. She said, put your name on the list first. Like, put your name on the list. You have to be taken care of too. And so that's one way to begin practicing self-care is putting your name on the list. I need to
Ooh,
be fed. I need to take my meds. I need to go sit down for 5 minutes and be quiet. I would put on there, Sandra, go sit outside in the backyard and get some air. Like I would literally like write it down, put your name on the list first. And that is very helpful when you're first starting to practice self-care. That just helps remind you, hey, I need to take care of myself first.
I need to eat. Yes,
Yes.
I need to eat because
Yeah.
like I said, I'm gonna make sure Jermaine eat. I'm gonna
Yes.
make sure my other son is taken care of because I have two, and my older son, he's on the spectrum too. He's 22. He's very high functioning, but he has social, some things socially, some struggles there. He has some things with organization. So I'm dealing with both of them, and I'm trying
Mm,
now because he's 22 to let go of him a little bit. But from being his caregiver for so long and knowing that he has these struggles, I'm constantly, and he'll tell me, this is when I know I'm doing too much. He'd be like, Ma, I'm not stupid. And I'm like, okay, he got it. Like, you don't have to care for him in that area. And for the caregivers who have lost someone and who no longer have that role, what would you say to them? Because this is part of our identity. Like, this is like, who am I when I'm not taking care of Jermaine? Like, who am I now that my mom is gone? Who am I now that Joanne is gone? So I know that you deal with other caregivers. I know that you deal with families. So what is that message for those people who are, one, going through their loved one transitioning, and two, they're no longer the caregiver, but their mentality is still there?
yeah. So one of the things that I say sometimes is um, I help you be a great caregiver without losing yourself in the process.
Mm,
And that's why I say it like that, because so that when that happens, you still have some kind of identity. You don't lose yourself in that person, and that becomes your identity. I remember a couple of, I think maybe, has it been 4 years now? I was taking a workshop with Nina, Nina. And during the workshop, we had to answer some questions like, what's your favorite color? Where do you like to shop? Like all these questions like that. Girl, I had to think hard. I knew where my husband liked to shop. I knew where my kids liked to shop. I knew all their favorite colors, but I had to think hard about me.
Mm.
And it's because I had just poured my whole life into everybody else, my patients at work, my mom, my family. Like, what happened to me? And so
Woo.
that's why I say you got to learn how to be a great caregiver without losing yourself in the process, because anything is a transition. Like if you're taking care of somebody and that's been your whole life, like I said earlier, 24/7, and then they're no longer here, there's going to be a huge transition in that area. I mean, it was a huge transition for me to retire. You think when you retire, oh, it's going to be all fun. No, it's a transition. It's a completely different schedule. You got to just kind of rethink things and rearrange things. Anything, there's so many things in life that are transitions, and we have to be prepared for it. And so the way that you are prepared for that is to not lose yourself in the first place.
Woo.
Take care of yourself in the first place. Love yourself, self-love, love yourself in the first place, so that when these transitions happen, you're still there. You still know yourself, and you can move on to whatever that next phase of your life is.
Oh, I love this so much. I got another question for you. I hate to, I know we were having this conversation, but you were a nurse in a NICU, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many mothers who are dealing with new babies, which we don't want to just put caregiving on something that is a struggle or an illness. There are mothers who have children who are normal, who don't have, special needs, are caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
Wives who take care of families and who stay home are caregivers. New moms are just becoming caregivers. Moms who have babies who are born, with some challenges are caregivers. What do you say to the mom who is just becoming a mom who has not been a caregiver of a baby?
So the first thing that I would say to that is, so part of what I do is education, resources, and support. And so education is key in anything. You want to know everything you can about whatever it is you're doing. So if you're a new mom, you want to read, you want to go to classes, and and I don't know if it was just our culture or growing up, no one talked about support groups or therapy or anything
Mm,
like that in my family. No one talked about it. And if they did talk about it, it was in a negative way. And so I really try to encourage people to reach out for help. Like we can't do life by ourselves. And so a new mom, I would tell them to educate themselves about being a mom, read a book. They might say, oh, it's all natural, but it may be natural for some people and it may not come naturally for other people. Some people may need more help than others. So I would say educate yourself. I would say find your resources. And you can find resources by asking your pediatrician for help, at social workers before you leave the hospital, the nurses. Find some resources and get
mm,
some support. If you need to go to a support group, go to a support group. The thing is society wants to shame you about everything. Oh, Lord, she got to go to a class and learn how to feed a baby. Oh, Lord, she got to go to a class and learn how to take care of a baby. So what? Don't listen to that. If you need help, you need help. It's better for you to get help than for you to be over there trying to do it all by yourself and not know what you're doing and then mess up. And then somebody
mm,
call you a bad mama. you
mm.
know? So my what I would say is education, resources, and support. That's the best thing you can do. And I'm gonna tell you, even for me, even as a nurse, I had never gone to a support group. I just never thought I needed that. You know what I
Mm.
mean? I was
Yes.
like, support group, everyone's just gonna be talking about sad stuff. Like I just, and I will tell you, the first night that I went to support group, I cried so hard I could never introduce myself.
Oh.
I couldn't even say my name. I was so full, and I'm going to tell you why. It's because with mental illness, a lot of times you think this bizarre behavior that's going on is only happening in your house. Like you just think this cannot be happening anywhere else, right?
Woo.
And when I went to the support group, the people, first of all, a lot of the people had family members around my family members' age. And you guys, excuse me, I do not say my family member's name or diagnosis because they want to be anonymous, and so I cannot share that with you. But I was there, and oh my gosh, the same things are happening in their house that's happening in my house. Oh my gosh, her family member did this, the same as like it was. I so I think sometimes, even though we don't realize it, we're feeling alone. We're feeling like this is only happening here. Don't nobody understand us. Like none of that. And that support group gave me so much. It empowered me because I didn't feel alone anymore. I felt like, okay, this is something that's happening in other places. I can share whatever I want to share in here because these people understand. Because sometimes even when we have friends and family who are supportive of us and who help us, if they haven't been in that house and seeing what happens, they can't understand 100%. But someone in a support group can understand 100%. So if you're a new mom and you go to a support group, there are people there who are going through the same thing. My daughters, actually, both of my girls who have been around, cousins, kids, they both belong to like new mom groups, and they learn a lot, and it helps them. And sometimes when you're a new mom and the baby is screaming, and you're just like, oh my God, I cannot handle this. Like, you can talk to other people and they laugh about it or they make jokes about it. One one time, my daughter put in the support group. She had an issue with my granddaughter who she would get the baby wipes and she was eating the baby wipes, and she like, what is going on with my kid that she just wants to eat these baby wipes?
Baby wipes.
And so one day I was talking to her on the phone and the baby was in the car screaming, just screaming. And then all of a sudden, boop, I didn't hear anything. And I was like, what happened? How did you get her to stop? She said, I gave her a baby wipe. And she felt so guilty. She said, I just shoved it in her mouth. And she just started eating the baby wipe. And so, she was upset. Like later on in the day, she was crying. Why did I do that? And so she jumped on a live with her mom groups, and they all consoled her, and they talked about it, and just talked about the pros and cons of it. And so they tell me that those groups help a lot. And so, but the biggest thing is we can't be ashamed to ask for help.
Right.
You can't be at home just being alone, whether it's a new mom or you're taking care of all time, whatever you're doing. Don't do this alone. We don't have to do life alone anymore.
No.
So
you gotta get help.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
You gotta get help. And like Sam just said, you have to get around people who understand what you're going through. Yes. There is nobody else that can understand what it's like to be an autism mom, except another autism mom or except another autism dad. And even that, I need to talk to autism moms. Autism dads need to talk to autism dads. We can all talk together, but it is different for an autism mom. It's a different level of frustration for me. It's a different level of exhaustion for me than what it is for an autism dad, because most of the time the mom is hands-on, right? And most of the time the dads are dealing with a different mentality based on the fact that their son's not playing football, their son's not doing the boy things, the fist pumps, the haircuts. So you need people who actually, like you said, when I go to my support groups, I'm going to talk to parents. So when we have our outings, I'm going to say, girl, this happened. They say, oh, girl, please, that didn't happen to me. He did that. He stopped doing it. This is what you got to do. This is how you got to handle that. And that might not work, but that's okay. And like you said, we laugh about it and we cry about it and we scream about it and we shout about it and we talk to each other about, it's okay for me not to want to be an autism mom all the time, because I feel guilty. Like, well, I don't want to be an autism mom.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I could talk to
like doing this no more.
Right. I don't feel like, but I could talk to you I'm tired of being a caregiver. And it's okay for me to say that, because that you wake up sometimes and I'm tired of being a kid. I'm tired of doing this. And I feel no shame or shade towards you if you said that to me. But somebody else who's not in our shoes would be like, oh, why would she even say that about her autistic child? I'm not saying that about him. I love my son. Right. But there's some daggone days that I wake up and I'm just like, I don't want to be an autism mom today.
Right. Which is why you cannot be afraid to ask for help. Because you're a human. You're going to get tired, mentally, physically, and spiritually tired. You won't get tired. Yes. And so please, whoever's listening, don't be afraid to ask for help. And, and I know that there are some people, I've helped a lot of people who they feel like they have no help. Yep. There's no family around. It's just them. and the person they're taking care of, they and the respite care sometimes can be expensive if you do go to like a professional respite care, but go to support groups. Somebody there will probably help you. Church, wherever you can find someone to help you. Just if somebody can just help you for an hour, take it away for an hour, like I just encourage you to not just sit in that and say I'm all alone and there's no help. There's help out there. I've talked about this before. It's hard to find. Yes, it's hard to find sometimes, but there's help out there. You just have to be creative and not just sit there and accept being alone. You have to be creative and find some help. I encourage people that all the time.
Right.
You just have to find it.
Yes, and this is another point from caregivers that I just want to talk about, because we are talking about mental wellness, mental exhaustion. When my mom passed away, and I know this is going to help somebody tonight. I had took care of my mom, I think, for 3 years. I think it was 2 or 3 years. I can't even remember right now. It's been so long. And it was just such a long process. And I wish it could have been longer. I'm not complaining or anything. But after a few days, after my mom had passed, and I was just like in a place of, I went through this phase of guilt because I wasn't glad that she was gone. I was just glad I didn't have to take care of her anymore. And I know so many people who are going through that, who have lost their loved one and may still be going through it because that guilt. And I just want to talk a little bit about that, because I was just like, until I talked to other people, and it gave me, the opportunity to understand that it wasn't just me that felt that relief. I'm happy that my mother's not in pain. I'm happy that my mother's not sick anymore. But I was also happy that my body wasn't going through the trauma of not only physically taking care of her, but mentally watching her disintegrate. And when she passed, it was one day, maybe a couple of weeks after she passed, and I had this moment of relief. And I felt so bad. I felt so bad about being relieved. Like I was, and I felt like I was happy. I'm not happy that she died, but I felt like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I encourage people, don't be afraid of therapy and don't be afraid of support groups, because you're going to need some grief counseling or grief support groups for that. And it may even need to be a specific group, because some people may just be having a basic grieving, but that's a specific grieving process because you're feeling a certain way, right? And I mean, maybe they cover that in regular, but I would really suggest someone go to a therapist at that point, because that kind of stuff can mess with you, and then you can get sick, and then you end up depressed and all that. But those things, if you don't have a healthy way of getting out of that, clearing your mindset from that, it can go into a bad place.
So yeah, and I want some people,
counseling, support groups, like seriously.
And I want anybody who's listening right now to understand that when you are a caregiver for me, it was a few years. There are people who are caring for Alzheimer's, dementia. There are people who are caring for mothers and fathers who have cancer for their first bout, their second bout, their third bout. There are people who are caregivers who are caring for people for a long time. And I just want those people who are listening right now that have had that moment of relief. I'm telling you, it's not that you're happy. And I had to go through the process of this with therapy, and I had to go through the process of this with talking to other people. You're not happy that your loved one died. You were exhausted. You were physically, mentally drained, exhausted. And I'm telling you, I was so exhausted from pretending like my mother was okay, because she was looking to me as the caregiver for that light. Like, are we okay? Like, she would ask me, and I would come in, I'm like, yeah, we good. And I knew from talking to her doctors that, they said, take your mom home, get her comfortable, because there's really nothing else we could do. So we're going to send you home with this and that. And I never let them say that to her. They said it in front of her one time, and I told them, don't ever tell her that again. Like, don't tell her that. And they were like, we got to tell the patient. But once she heard that, and I was like, we're going to be okay. God is good. She was able to get that out of her mind. But it was mentally exhausting for me to come in there and smile every day, cleaning my mother's. She had an open wound because they had removed her breast, and it never healed because it was so far gone that it was crazy, the smell and everything. But I didn't want her to know. So me going in there, I couldn't be look at this open wound and be like, oh my God, I had to go in there and be like, get the gauze and the saline and be like, oh, we talking.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
on my inside, I'm like, oh my God, like
Right,
I
right.
cannot believe I'm looking at a gaping hole on my mother's chest. So
Yes.
I just want people who are going through those caregiving processes to understand that you are not happy that your loved one died. You were just so mentally exhausted that you are glad that
You need
both
a
of you are
break.
at peace.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
What would
absolutely.
you say to the family members who have, because I know that you were a nurse and you were around families where there were caregivers. What would you say to those family members who are not the immediate caregiver? Like, what would you tell them as far as the caregiver who is the ones that is hands-on? What would you advise them to do, or is there anything you would
The
tell
ones who
them?
are not hands-on,
Yeah, the ones who are not hands-on.
the same thing. So someone was surprised when I suggested this to them if they go to counseling or support group or therapy. Well, I wasn't there all the time. It don't matter. It affected you, right? It affected you and it bothered you and you were sad and you went through the same thing as the other person. So you still need help too. And I don't know if a lot of people think about that or realize that. I have some siblings who, so my one sister lives with my mom, and the siblings who don't live with her, I tell them like, so my mom, because her symptoms are like bipolar. Now this is a trip because now she's 81, so she still does her bipolar stuff, but now there's some dementia setting in too. So it's kind of tricky. But I've told them to go to the NAMI has a family to family class. Go to the class. Well, I'm not with her every day. It doesn't matter. It's your mom. It's affecting you. You still need to be educated about what's going on with her. It doesn't matter
Right.
if you're not the person who's hands-on. You still need help too. You still feel that. You're still feeling that in your heart too. So
Right.
you too
It is your
also,
mother.
yes, yes. So
It is.
so for someone who never went to therapy, never thought they needed support groups and stuff, now I'm like all about telling people to go all the time.
Right, because we learned from our own struggles. We learned from our experiences of,
Yes,
if only I had went to therapy and support group sooner,
yes.
because I went to a support group very early on with my son, because it was presented to me, and when I met the woman whose support group it was, she was so supportive, because I didn't know anything about autism. I was just like, they was like,
Mhm.
your son got autism.
You like, what
And
is
I
that?
was right. I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, what am I supposed to do? And then when I started reading it, it was all bad stuff. Like, I was like, oh my God, he's never going to do this. He's never going to do that. What am I going to do? And then when I moved from one area that I lived into the other one, and I went to the hospital where the neurologist was, I was introduced to the support group. And I was like, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. My goal autism support group. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was the best thing that could ever happen to me. So any
Mhm.
mom who's a caregiver of a child on the spectrum, I'm telling you, autism is no joke. It's not easy. And people, might say, oh, you just, you're overreacting. No, no. Autism ain't no joke. And no two cases are the same. I can't
Right.
tell a person that your child is going to do this or do that, because no two cases are the same. But I can tell you this: my son got potty trained at 9, and I was so stressed about him being potty trained.
Mhm.
But the people in my support group were like, yo, like, he just, it's okay, he's going to get potty trained, and if he doesn't, that's okay too, then he'll wear a pull-up. Like, stop. And when my son lost his first tooth, I was freaking out, like, because with the other two, the tooth came out, we put it under the pillow, which was normal for most
Yeah,
Black people. You put the tooth under
yeah.
the pillow, you the tooth fairy. And I woke up, his tooth was gone. I was like, oh my God, his tooth is gone. What happened to it? And I called, I talked to Genevieve, who was the woman she said, you know, he may have swallowed it. And she has an accent because she's from Ghana. She said he may have swallowed it, but it's going to come out in his poop. And I was like, oh, okay. She said he may swallow all his teeth. Right.
Oh,
So when you
mhm.
go to these support groups, there are people here who have been through what you're going. There's some new people there, but there's some people that have been going through this
Been
for
through
10
it
to
a long
20
time.
years. Yeah. Just like my son also with Santa Claus. He didn't want to sit on Santa Claus's lap. And again, the parents in the support group were like, don't make him sit on Santa Claus' lap.
Yeah, right.
You doing this for you. And I was like, Oh, like,
Right. So a lot of times it's our expectations that have to change. It's not them, it's us. It's our expectations that have
yeah.
to change. One thing, while we're talking about mental exhaustion for the caregiver, one of as you were talking, I said to you, one of the words that came to my mind is stigma. So a lot of times we use the word stigma when we're talking about someone with the actual illness because, it's interesting because when I first started telling people what was going on, with my family member, they were like, "Oh, my son too," or "Oh, my nephew too," or "Oh, yes." And I'm like, I never knew. No one ever told me anything until you share your information, then they'll share with you. And people would tell me, "Well, we don't share because people will bully them, people will treat them different," stigma. And so, even though we talk about stigma for them, I just want to present to you guys, a lot of times we're going through mental exhaustion because we have stigma ourselves. That's why we don't ask for help. That's why we don't go to therapy. That's why we don't go to counseling. We don't want nobody to know that something's going on with us. People may see us as being weak, or people may see us as not being a good mom or not being a caregiver because we're asking for help. That's a stigma. And we have to get out of that. We have to get over that. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. There's nothing wrong with educating yourself. There's nothing wrong with going to a support group. It's necessary.
Yep.
Um, and when I said necessary, that reminds me, I have these two, you can't see them, but I have these two quotes they hang on my bathroom wall. And can I read? It's okay if I read them to you?
Yes, please.
So one of them says, it's by someone by the name of Audre Lorde. And it says, self-care is not about self-indulgence. It's about self-preservation.
Woo!
And it's like, when you unpack that, like, so self-preservation, I have a definition here one time because I was looking at this. This was last year, I think I looked this up. So the definition of preservation is to maintain or keep alive.
Woo!
Another definition says that it's the act or process of keeping something safe from damage or deterioration.
Mm.
So if you read it again, saying self-care is not about self-indulgence, it's about keeping alive. Self-care is not self-indulgence. It's maintaining me from damage or deterioration.
Woo!
Would that make y'all practice self-care a little bit better? Would that make it become more important for you?
Come
When you
on
look
now.
at it like that, self-care is about keeping alive.
What's the other
Self-care is making
quote?
sure that I don't deteriorate.
Yes.
I just and then I had the other one says, rest and self-care is so important. When you take time to replenish your spirit, it allows you to serve others from the overflow. You cannot serve from an empty vessel, by Eleanor Brown. And I know a lot of people have heard that one, but just think about it. You can't serve from an empty vessel. And so a lot of times so earlier we were talking about, we don't feed ourselves. It's okay, we don't feed ourselves. But then eventually we start having a headache. Why am I, like you said earlier, why am I having a headache? Well, because I don't feed myself. So let's say we do that for a few more days. So our jar is getting empty because we ain't fed ourselves. So then a few days later, we feel like we're catching a cold. Why are we catching a cold? We have not poured any nutrition into ourselves. We ain't fed ourselves. We're catching a cold. So then you keep doing that a little bit longer and you start feeling stressed or burned out. And you do it a little longer, you're going to end up in the hospital.
Yep.
It may take days or weeks or months or years, but the fact of the matter is you are trying to serve from an empty vessel. And a lot of times we keep going and going and going. It may still be one little drop in that jar, right? That jar of water. We started with an empty glass, a full glass of water. It might still be another drop. And guess what? We're going to still keep trying to push until we fall out. We can't serve from an empty vessel, y'all. We got to take care of ourselves. Me and my friend were talking, when I read that one about self-preservation, though, like keeping alive, not deteriorating, that's deep. That's like,
girl,
we gotta do better. There's a scripture that me and my friend talk about all the time. That it says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And we were talking, and she's like, really, the second part of that scripture is really the first part. Like, if you're gonna love your neighbor as yourself, you gotta so that means I'm loving myself. So I got to love myself. I got to love
Ooh.
myself. I got to practice self-care. I got to take care of me so I can pour all of this out to everybody else. The same love and time and energy and all that we're given to the people we take care of, we got to give that to us too.
Yes.
We got to give it to
Love
us.
your
We got to give
love
it to
your
us
neighbor.
first. We got to give it
Yes.
to us first so that we can give it to them.
The right way, because that makes love yourself, love your neighbor like you love yourself. If you're not loving yourself well,
you go right. And then
you ain't gonna treat them right.
Right. You're not gonna treat them right.
I am loving them like I love myself. I treat myself like trash.
Yeah. Right. And then eventually, I've had incidences like at work and stuff where people done got so far to now they're mistreating their loved one who they're caregiving for,
Yes.
So
yes. Because that's what happens when you're exhausted. You don't have I can't be patient with my son if I'm exhausted. I'm aggravated because I'm tired because I didn't go to sleep last night and get no rest. So now he don't know.
Right.
He don't know I didn't get no rest. He's just being himself. And I'm in here, oh, go sit down, and I have no patience. So we have to take care of ourselves. Or if I'm hungry. Hungry shows up in different ways. If you're really hungry, you're really sleepy. And you're like, why am I so tired? Because you're hungry. If you're mad, you really are hungry. And your body is setting off a signal of something is not right. So we have to take care of ourselves. So I thank you so much. So we've been on for an hour and I want to be mindful of your time and my time. But if you would do this again, like anytime, once a month, maybe to just come and pour into the people who are listening. I see Kathleen is here. I see Tanya, they're saying thank you. We needed this, was so necessary. I just want you to give some final thoughts to people who are caregivers who are mentally exhausted.
So let me see how can I quickly summarize this. We talked about so much stuff. Back to the basics. So make sure that you are pouring in nutrition into your body. Make sure you're exercising. And I don't mean you got to go to the gym and do weights. I just go for a walk. I walk 40 minutes a day. Make sure sleep is so important. People just underestimate the power of sleep. You can't even lose weight if you're not getting proper sleep. There's studies that have shown that because of all your cortisol levels and stuff. That's probably a whole nother talk, Trey. But so make sure you're pouring in nutrition, exercising, sleep. Make sure you're having a healthy mental state, whether that's meditating or practicing mindfulness practices, and then have your spiritual well-being. Make sure you're feeding your spirituality with whatever that means for you. Make sure those 5 basic things are done. And then also take time for some of those fun things, massages, getting your nails done, shopping, all of that. But remember those 5 things. That will help you with your mental exhaustion. Is practicing those 5 things and getting into that mindfulness practice, practicing self-care, practicing self-love. You can't do it by yourself. Make sure that you're getting some help from a support group, a therapist, family, wherever you need to get some help from. Hopefully that is helpful to everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody who tuned into our caregivers conversation. We will be back. If you have any questions, please, where can they find you?
So my website, caregivershaven.com, will be up by next week. Until then, you can DM me on Instagram at caregivershaven.
Okay. Thank you so much. So thank you guys for tuning in tonight. And remember to take care of yourself. Self-care is not selfish. Love yourself first. Put the mask on first. And don't forget that it is okay to not be okay. And it is okay to ask for help. We will see you guys next time. Peace and blessings. And we love you. And we love all our caregivers. Please stay strong, ask for help, and lean on other people.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Good night, everybody.